right, so we're going to start this, and then we're going to stop because I get often these things that don't work correctly. So, good morning to all of you, and to some of you, you're in different parts of the world where there is a different time of day, and I'm just waiting here on my Amazon thing. Here we go. I'm going to go live on Amazon. So what we are doing this morning, everyone, is we are unboxing and testing out the new Samsung T7. I bought this the other day on Amazon because it's out. I saw this at CES when we were out at the show. And these things are really great. I've been using these little solid-state drives for years now. I'll give you another view of the box on my overhead shot here so you can see what we're playing with. And I've been using these for years. In fact, I use them for a lot of video editing. And that is good stuff. So it's, you know, here's the thing with these SSDs is that back in the the late 90s when I was starting to do video stuff in college, you needed a RAID array. You needed one of these, striping things with SCSI, and you'd spend, $4,000 or $5,000 on them and stuff. These things are like mini RAID arrays. They do really, really well, and I think they're pretty cool to have in your repertoire. And there's a lot of choices now, so that's how it goes there. So we have some people popping in to say hello. We have Phantom Gaming who wants to see how this thing will work for streamers. I think it'll work well. There's a lot of choices now, and a lot of them perform about the same, but we'll see how well this one does when we start running through some benchmarks. Cassie Mack here is from Glasgow, Scotland. Welcome, new subscriber and new to Fire Stick, so welcome to the channel. We have Sina is here once again, and we have Shabab Salim from Dubai, loves the T5 and waiting for the review of the T7. And I'm going to have the review hopefully up tonight. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to start playing with it, and then I want to shoot the video later today. And I've got to leave at 11 a.m. Eastern time to go pick my daughter up from school. So we're going to be a little crunch for time this morning. So I'm going to start unboxing this thing. Lee is here. Vic Ashford wants to know how much. So there are two versions. There's a 500 gig for $129 and a 1 terabyte for $229. So $100 more for 500 gigs. And here is the choice that you have when you're buying one of these for an external hard drive. You can swap performance. Well, here's your choice. You can get lots of storage or lots of performance. And if you want both, you pay through the nose. But if you're just looking for a fast drive, 500 gigs, that's what I got here, this is pretty adequate. One thing to note, and I didn't buy the terabyte version, but I found with the Samsung drives that oftentimes the larger ones perform better because they're able to do some of the dual channel kind of work on the chips on board to make things a little faster. So we'll see how it all plays out. Who else we have here? We've got Richard Sullivan from Wales. We have Jedi Bouncer from London. Sina is from Sweden. And Jose is from Riverview, Florida. Excuse me, I just got a cough first. So we've got a lot of the world represented. And it's funny, depending on what time of day I pop on, we get people from different parts of the world. So it looks like we'll be heavier in Europe and other parts of the world that are not in the morning right now. So good stuff. All right. So I'm going to probably just shoot a little unboxing here first, although I think I'm going to get the review up tonight if I'm able to squeeze everything in today. So let me just do this real quick. I'm going to hit the record button. So I'm going to record. So if I do a couple of takes here, that's why it's weird. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for another unboxing. Today we got in the portable SSD T7 Touch from Samsung. I paid for this with my own funds, incidentally, so they are not paying for this unboxing, nor is anyone reviewing it or approving it before it gets uploaded. This is the latest portable solid-state drive that they've come up with. They've been making these for a long time. They're one of the first manufacturers to do so. And this new version, they say, is faster, and it incorporates a fingerprint sensor now for its encryption. And we're going to be doing a full review of this soon on my main channel at Lon.TV. So this is what it looks like. Very thin, very light. There's no moving parts in these, of course. They are super fast. There's a 500 gig version, which is what we have here. That sells at the moment for about $130, and then for $100 more, you can get the terabyte version. So they are a little more expensive than some of the other ones that you might be able to find out there now. There's a lot of choices for solid-state drives. So let's see what we have for cables and stuff in the box here. So this is, oh, this is good. So this is a USB-C to USB-A connector because it does have a USB-C port here on the back. And what's nice about this is that they're not giving you some crazy out-of-spec adapter. So if you've got an older USB port you want to plug it into, use this cable. And then if you want to plug it into a USB-C device, you can use this one, which is a USB-C to C cable. One thing to note with this drive is that this supports USB 3.1 Gen 2. So its theoretical maximum bandwidth is 10 gigabits per second. But as you'll see, you never get close to that in real-world testing. But to get the best performance, you need to make sure the USB-C cable you're using supports Gen 2. Otherwise, you won't get the full performance. And that's the biggest confusion point, I think, with USB-C, because all of these cables look the same, but they have different performance specifications. So this one, of course, is Gen 2 because it comes with it. But if you want to buy a longer cable, make sure you buy the right one. Otherwise, your performance will decline. And then in here, it looks like we've got the manual and the quick start guide. This will need some software if you want to use the fingerprint sensor. If you don't, then it'll just work like any other regular dumb hard drive. So stay tuned. We're going to have a full review of this soon on the main channel, again at Lon.TV. We'll look at its performance, how the fingerprint sensor works, and a whole bunch of other stuff too. So stay tuned. More to come on this. All right. Done. Unboxing. And people like the unboxings because they want to know what comes in the box. All right, who else we got here? We've got AJ Asanti from Ghana. Welcome. Pradeep is from India. Awesome. We've got everybody's represented here today. It's amazing. I can sit in my basement and say hello to everybody all around the world. It's awesome. All right, so we're just going to do Samsung unboxing. I'm just logging the clip here for later so I know where to find it. I've been having some real problems lately with my TriCaster and exporting. I've had a very rough week technologically. Recipe Bob is here, welcome. Hakuru-san is here, welcome. Mail Care is here from New York City, not too far from me. Robin, and another one from the UK, welcome Robin. All right, and Pradeep hopes this brings down the price of the T5s. David Yablonsky is joining us from Florida, another one of my favorite places to visit because it's nice and warm in Florida. It is cold where I am today. My office, by the way, is a mess. I look like a technological hoarder. So I think what we're going to do first is run a couple of benchmarks on this. And I'm going to start on the Mac, and we're going to run the Crystal Disk Mark test. Now what I've got here is my MacBook Pro and my PC. And we're going to do one of these tests again on the Mac because that's the test that I want to do for the Blackmagic speed test. And then we're going to move it over to the PC because I want to run the Crystal Disk Mark test, which is a way to see how it does random reads and writes. And also, I want to get the fingerprint sensor working and see what impact that has on that benchmark. So that is the plan here. And we're going to capture some B-roll footage that we're going to use in some of the other parts of the review. So here is an overhead view, and then we've got let me get my Mac's backdrop going here. And let's go over to, back to the Finder maybe, let's see. Oops. So the Mac is asking me if I want to use this as a time machine backup. So the Mac is good about getting you to back your stuff up. So you can see here, they're like, hey, do you want to use this as a backup? I'm going to say don't use. Now what I'm curious about is what the drive is formatted as. So let me just get that figured out. My guess is that they're now formatting these things as exFAT, which is kind of the more universal file system. So let's take a look and see. Yeah, so this is formatted as exFAT. And oddly, it's like no date, January 1st, 1980. And then it says the volume was created in 1969. Isn't that funny? But it is exFAT. And this is the one thing that has been confusing me on the Mac lately, is that I get, I have a 500 gig capacity, and then it says that it's got like 3 gigs of purgeable space. I don't know what's going on with the Mac, but I'm getting these, like I'll have like a memory stick that's got 16 gigs, and it'll tell me I've got more than that. Crazy stuff. Who else we got here? We have Vladimir's from Latvia. My wife's family actually is from Latvia. She's 50% Latvian, so I have some connection to Latvia. And we have 001 Delight from the Philippines, and Morocco is in the house from Division by Zero. And Alex Bunk out in California. It's early there, 7 a.m., but he's there. Botswana, View 52. This is awesome. It's amazing where everybody calls in from. All right, so these are the software packages that you will have for the fingerprint reader. So if we want to install those later, that's what we're going to go with to get that going. It'll work on the Mac or Windows, but noticeably absent is Linux support for that. And I would like to see that fingerprint reader implemented in hardware so you wouldn't need software, right? So that's something to think about. Also, it looks like there is an app for Android, so we're going to have to look at that also. So let me make a note. And it's a good thing I've got Android phones with USB-C ports on them now, so we can check that out. So I'm just going to start a document on my other computer here just to get my notes down, because I'm curious what that Android app would have. And then another thing I'll do in the review is we'll plug it into the iPad, because iOS now has support for external storage. Not the best support, but it's got support now. So that's another thing we have to test. And that's the thing. There's so many things now you have to think about with these reviews and covering everything. So, I'm going to make a note here. We need to look at Android with app, iOS support. And then how does the fingerprint reader work with that? So, all right, so we'll put that in there. And it could be that perhaps the software will activate some kind of hardware decryption. So that's what we need to kind of figure out here as we start testing around with everything. All right, so we got that. All right, first things first though, let's just see how it performs. So I'm going to pull up my Blackmagic disk speed test, and we're just going to run it. What I like about the Blackmagic disk speed test is that it's a good way to figure out how the device does under sustained loads. Let me pull up the screen here so you can see what it looks like. So this is what it looks like here. And what I'm going to do real quick, because I'm getting a bunch of text messages. Okay, it's on Do Not Disturb. Excellent. So my text messages are synced up with my Mac, so nothing nefarious, but the senders may not want their messages out over the world here. All right, so we're going to go and just kind of point it at that folder. And what's nice about this test is that as it runs, I'm going to record some B-roll for this too. As it runs, it puts the drive under load. And as you'll see with these write speeds, I expect that write speed to dip here as we go back through a couple of these test cycles. So performance here isn't bad. Now we've seen NVMe drives perform better, especially the Thunderbolt ones. In fact, Samsung makes a Thunderbolt test. Now look at the write speed though, right? It's starting to decline a bit, and I think we're going to see that drop further as we put it under more sustained load. Let's see what happens. Because there's a cache that these drives have, and when that cache fills up, it slows down because now you're looking at write speeds back to the flash memory. So you can see it's struggling here to kind of keep it above 800 megabytes per second. But here's the difference though. On the NVMe drives, including ones that Samsung makes, they tend to see a dramatic performance decline the longer this test runs, because the drive gets too hot, the cache fills up, and then it slows itself down. So if you can keep it consistent, that actually sometimes is better than a drive that can burst really nicely for 20 seconds and then drop off. So what I'm seeing here actually is not bad. And I have found, though, that some companies are kind of tuning their devices for this kind of test as well. So we may have to come up with some other ways to see how these things do with larger writes. But I'm not unhappy here. 800 megabytes per second on writes consistently, it appears, is pretty good. And the reads are looking pretty good, too. And as this is running, we have some other folks in here. So Scott is here. He wants to ask a question off topic. He sure can. I don't know if I'll be able to answer it, but I'll try. Siltago is here from the Netherlands, and he's on the road in a train. Awesome. So he's moving pretty fast. They got fast trains out there in Europe. Kansas is awake. Welcome, Tristan. And Lord Viper is here from the UK. David's going to come back and watch the replay. He's got to probably get back to work or go to work. On the Intel NUC, is the HDMI port full size, or do you need an adapter? It depends on which NUC it is. I'm pretty sure they're all full size, though. Keith Richardson says, I guess the Samsung Magician software is okay. Yeah, we're going to have to try out the software here in a minute. Toy Pan says 11 p.m. where he is. Kind of sleepy. Yeah, don't worry, Toy. We're going to have a full review, which will be much more concise than what you're watching now. And Tech Life is here from London. Lots of folks from the UK and Europe this morning. So here we go. So this has been running now for about 3 minutes. I'm going to let it go to about 5 minutes and just see how it does here. But it's holding itself consistent. And like I said, what you'll see on some of these NVMe-based drives is the write speed would be dropping off by now, because this test doesn't give it enough time to flush the cache before it starts writing again. So this is pretty good. Now granted, you'll find NVMe drives that will perform better, but find me one that will keep its performance consistent. And that's the big difference now. And to be honest, for what a lot of people are going to be doing, you know, like, are you going to be really writing 800 megabytes per second for 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Maybe if you're capturing raw footage from someplace, but, you know, not bad. And I'll tell you what all these things mean here in a second when we wrap the test up. So Travis is talking about USB 4.0, and I was at PepCom at CES kind of walking around and talking to people, and it's actually going to be just as confusing, because apparently there's going to be modes that are supported and not supported. It's not going to be much better, unfortunately. But this one's doing pretty good. Yeah, we're hovering right around 800 megabytes per second, so not bad. I'm just going to make some notes here. Blackmagic speed test, hovering around 800 megabytes per second. Writes, 885 or so reads. Okay. And let this go maybe another 30 seconds or so and see how it does here. And what's happening too, it's got a nice little light on the top here. Let me show you what it's doing. So as it's active, it's got just a cool LED light here. The box calls this emotional, what do they call this? The box calls this emotional design. Here, let me get that in there for you. Emotional design. So I'm emotional, or it is emotional. I don't know if I want my hard drive to be emotional. I'd rather it just kind of stick to the data. Who else we got here? We've got Charleston, South Carolina from Scott H. Welcome. All right. Well, okay, so we're going to let this go another round here. We're past the 5-minute mark now. But watch that write, because it just dropped to like 790. Yep, it's back up to 800. Okay. Yeah, it's consistent. I'm going to say that's consistent. All right, so let me stop the test here. I'm going to tell you what all this stuff means. I just need to add the B-roll footage here. Bear with me for 1 second. What I'm doing behind the scenes is putting in my footage onto my TriCaster's media thing so I can... Okay, so just drop that in. Okay. All right, so let me show you what all this stuff means on here. So this test is looking at how well the drive can write video out that you might be recording in real time. And then it tells you here also, you know, what different formats require for that write out. So for example, if we were recording in Apple ProRes, that's the codec that I use for video, it's telling me that in the HQ ProRes format, this is adequate for capturing in real time 4K 60 footage, read and write. And ProRes is a compression format, but it's not as lossy as what you're watching right now with this live stream, which is an H.264 codec. So it's good performance. Cinema DNG RAW, which I think that's Adobe, right? Maybe not, but either way, you're going to get 4K 60 on both. Now, if you're just writing out raw, uncompressed 422 video, no dice on the 4K 50 and 60, but it looks like it can squeak by at 30. And that just gives you a feel for what it's able to do. And that's what's nice about this test, is that it's kind of replicating what you would experience, normally with one of these kinds of tests. So not bad. All right, so I'm encouraged by that because, again, I'm looking for faster performance than the old one, which is what we've got here so far. And I am looking to see whether or not the drive will perform consistently, which it does. So far, so good. All right, so we're going to pop the drive out of the Mac. And now we're going to do the crystal disk mark test on the PC. Let me just make sure my NDI is still broadcasting. Give me a second here, folks. Pull up camera 6. Looks like the NDI has stopped for a second here. Let me just get it going again. Give me 1 second, folks. We're just going to reconnect my laptop's video here. And we're going to go to laptop and enable that. May have to rejigger the, there it goes. Okay, now we're up, and I think we're good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to pop it out of the Mac, because we're done with the Mac for now. And what I'm also going to do is plug power back into my little MacBook here that I use to monitor what you all are saying, because this little Mac, its battery has seen better days. It's been well loved over the last 5 years of its use. This thing, by the way, I'm very saddened that they don't make this anymore, because this is the best sub-notebook ever. I love this MacBook. And it kills me that they don't have one replacing it. Now, what I'm going to do on the PC that I have here is I have a Thunderbolt 3 port here. I'm going to plug it into that. Granted, this is USB, but Thunderbolt is backwards compatible. Recipe Bob had a good comment there about his emotional SSD. Okay. We have a lot of things beeping on here. So what I'm going to do next, and I'll show you what I usually do with this test. Now, the reason why we're going to run this test is because this one looks at the random reads and writes, because that is as important for some folks as the other things that you might be doing with your hard drive. So I need to see if this is working here. Let me just make sure it's connected. So it's drive E. So I'm just going to reboot the disk test here. And this is called the crystal disk mark test that we're going to run now. This one's a little less dramatic to watch because it kind of just runs and you just see it fill in the information. So let me boot this back up here real quick. All right, and we're good to go. Okay, so we've got it going here. I'm going to point it at drive E, and I'm going to run 4 gig tests here, just to give it kind of a similar thing to what we saw in the other one. And you might see the sequential test come back a little differently, and that's not unusual with these things. So let us hit the button here and start that. And we're going to let that run. And like I said, this one's a little less interesting, but if you want to see the drive's emotions as it runs here, let me pull up my overhead view so you can get a feel for that. So we're going to let that do its thing. So we know the drive is getting some reads and writes here. And we're starting to get some results back from the computer. So it does 5 runs of the test. So it's going to read data first. And like I said, you might see faster speeds on this test because it runs a little differently than the Blackmagic one does. But I have found over the long haul that the Blackmagic for measuring sequential speeds is a little bit more accurate. Because you can see here it's like running the reads first. It goes through its 5 cycles and then does the writes. So we're not getting kind of a read-write cycle here. And we have Alfred from Dallas, Texas. Welcome. We've got, we got 2 folks in, Travis is in North Dallas, so we got some Dallas. What's funny is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that city, essentially, is bigger than my state. It's amazing how big it is. People don't realize that. We do have a question coming in on Amazon from A. Dale McMullen. He has a question about exchanging an item for a larger size. Same price, same item, just larger. Do I still get charged for returning the smaller size? That's a question for Amazon customer support. So I think they generally are pretty okay about returns, but you probably want to ask customer support about whether or not you want, how they'll handle that. Because I don't work for Amazon. I am an independent streamer here. And my thing would be that if you are not sure how much space you need, I would get the bigger one if you can afford it, because you'll always fill them up. It's kind of like buying a house. You know, get the house that you think you can afford, even if it's bigger than what you think you need right now, because you probably will fill it up. And these things certainly you'll be filling up. All right. So what are we looking at here? So we are looking at first of all the first read here, the 946. That is the multi-threaded sequential read test. The one below it, I believe, is the single thread. In other words, I don't quite understand how to explain it, but it's running with one thread of reads through the drive, whereas the other one's doing kind of like a multiple read situation to speed up performance. The last two are the random reads and writes. So now we're switching to the write cycle on the test. And those are the numbers we're really looking for here, is how does the drive handle a lot of this random traffic? And the reason is that if you were playing a game on this, or you were running an operating system on the drive, you know, it's not just a sequential pull from the drive and write to the drive. It's going to be putting little bits of data on the drive and maybe going out and looking for other things randomly, and that's more real world. So that's why we're looking at those two lower numbers to see how it performs versus other drives. And we'll talk about some comparatives there when it's done running. I think, though, it's looking pretty good on those random reads. 114.09 is pretty good. And these are megabytes per second, by the way. Nigel Roberts is back from London Heathrow. They had some crazy weather. So I watched this channel on aviation. It's called the Blanco Lirio channel. He does a lot of really good analysis of the airline industry. And he was commentating on a live stream from Heathrow during the storm. And it was crazy to watch those crosswind landings. And a bunch of planes were doing go-arounds because it was just crazy. And a few of them just came in hot and just stuck those landings. It was pretty wild watching that. All right. Paul is from Louisville, Texas. Steelman is from India, from Chennai, India. Chennai. Yes, Juan Brown, Bill Cody, that is him. Great channel. I love his channel. I'm getting dangerously close to so I need a new hobby, because I've turned my hobby into my job, which is this, and I love what I do, but I need a hobby. So I am thinking, and my wife's going to kill me, but I'm thinking about taking some flying lessons, and if I do it, I'm going to go all the way through. I'm going to go right through to instrument rating if I do it. And I've got to figure out if I have enough time to devote to it. But if I do, I'm going to go for it. All right, so this test has concluded. So we can see here on the multi-threaded sequential read and write test, we're pretty close to what we were seeing on the Blackmagic test. But here's the difference in how Crystal Disk Mark works again, is that it's doing all of these things in these own little buckets. So it's doing the read test, it's doing all the read tests, and then it's going and doing all the write tests. And what I like about the Blackmagic test is that it writes and reads in the same cycle, and it keeps repeating back and forth to not give the drive enough time to catch up. And that's why I think for sequential testing, the Blackmagic test is a little better. But on this one, we're looking at these random read and writes of small files that we have to find on the drive and then write back, simulating games and operating systems and stuff. And this is good. I mean, we're getting on the multi-threaded 4K thing here. You're looking at 114 megabytes per second on reads and 120 on writes. That's good, believe it or not, because again, these are small files. These are not big files. And I'm just going to go check my notes here, because I keep a log of drive performance in my Google Drive, and I just got to go pull up that spreadsheet because I want to see where we are at on this. So let me just go, I think it's in my benchmark table here, because I keep track of all of these crystal disk mark results. And this is one of the things that drives me crazy, though, is that this test has changed over time. So it used to run one way, and now it runs another way. So it's hard now to compare the newer drives to the older drives because of how they've changed things around. So I have done a little bit of work to update my spreadsheet with that, but I think I have it in here. Here we go, new crystal disk mark test. All right, so let me show you. I think I can pull this up. I think I'll pull this up on my computer here. Let me get it up on screen for you all so you can see what I'm looking at. And we'll type in these results as we go here. And the next thing we're going to try, we're going to install the software to see how the fingerprint reader works. And we might see different performance on that test. Recipe Bob, you got my space? Yes. So I got this at the SpaceX launch that I covered about 2 or 3 years ago. And if you go on my channel and go to Lon.TV/SpaceX, you can see that coverage. So that was a challenging, so anytime you go down and cover one of these SpaceX launches, it's challenging because, or any space launch for that matter, because you never know when the rockets are going to go off because they have weather concerns. SpaceX is even more challenging because they also have to take into account the weather out on the ocean, because if the seas are rough, they want to be able to retrieve those boosters. So bad weather on the ocean will impact their launches. So I covered the Discover launch back in, again, 2 or 3 years ago. And we were down in Florida for a family trip, so it happened to coincide with when I was there. So the family was hanging out at the place we were staying, and I was driving up to the Space Center every day for 3 days straight. And we were down in Palm Beach, so it was about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive every day. So I was like commuting to work at NASA every day, which was cool. But we did that one, and I did the Falcon Heavy last April. And I might try to get down for the manned launch. And this is one of the things that's challenging, because that video I did on the Falcon Heavy, that was certainly had good viewership. But this is the challenge with YouTube, is that it often gets you kind of into these silos where it sees me as the tech product guy, and my viewers may or may not be interested in space travel. So because I'm not a space channel, I don't do as well with that kind of coverage. So if you see me covering stuff, I'm doing it because I like to do it. I know a few of you like it as well, but it's hard to often get all that into the mix. All right, so let me show you what we're looking at here. This is the results of some similar drives, and I want to compare this to the Samsung NVMe Thunderbolt drive. So they have an X5 Thunderbolt. That's really nice. In fact, Porsche designed it. And as we can see here, let's ignore all the sequential stuff. So these two, I'm just trying to see how I organize what did I do here? They changed this again on this, didn't they? Yes, they did. Okay, no, they got it. Okay, the T sequential. Okay, so I got the reads together. Yeah, they did change this again. All right, so we've got to look at this differently. So hang on, folks. They changed the test on me again. Ugh. No, stop. Oh, great. We got to run this again. Sorry, folks. I still have the image. I don't think I saved the image, so we're going to run that one portion of the test again. All right, I'm going to have to run a few more tests on the older drives now to make this consistent. But just to give you some ideas to what we've seen in the past, if we go over and look at these 4K reads and writes, because these were those sequential, those random reads and writes from before. And what you'll see here, what am I looking at here? Okay, so I'm looking at the interfaces here too. Okay, so if we look at the other USB-C drives, the SanDisk Extreme actually did a little better. But again, this is not an apples to apples, so I got to look through the settings here and see if we can get those other tests back. And this is the problem with these benchmarks. They release a new version and then everything changes, and it's hard to continually do these comparisons. So let's wait for this to finish running out here, and then we'll take a second look at it. All right. Yeah, I'm going to have to go grab a few more of these drives maybe and look at... Is this what we were running before? Random 4K? Actually, this is what we had. Yeah. Okay, so let's run these random 4K. So they've got different profiles here. I'm just trying to see if there's a profile for how they used to have this thing configured. Looks like they're doing some mix tests now, which is good. So that is better. Okay, so I think, yeah. All right, so let's run this one real quick. And this will line up with the single-threaded random read and write performance that we had before. Video content company, Renee Kogelman is here from Holland. Depth of Horror wants to know the Legion Y730. This is the 740, I think. Yeah, it is the 740. I like this quite a bit. This has got the 2080 on it, and it's not as fast as a desktop 2080 would be because it's the Max Q, but it's been great because it's very thin and light, and that's what I was looking for, was something thin and light and portable. So I've been really, really happy with this. And you know what I'm going to probably do, folks, and we got to test out the fingerprint sensor. I'm going to run the whole test again in this real world profile because that's what I want, something that's closest to the real world as we can get. So that's what I want to see here. Although these numbers are like looking totally wacky. These are IOPS. Those are not. What is this thing doing? Oh, I see what this is. All right. Oh, okay. You know what? We may have been on the right track here. Let's go back to the default again. I'm just curious here as to exactly what we're looking at. All right, so sequential. Sequential 1 is 8 queues, 1 threads. I gotta really dig into this again. Or find the older version of it that we were running before. So it looks like this is version 7, and I think version 6 was what I last used on a hard drive test. So that's part of the problem. All right, let's, I don't think I recorded this, so let me have it run again in this default mode, and then I'm gonna grab a few other drives and just test those a little later. So we'll have this go again. All right. MG Fur is here from the Netherlands. Recently finished the BBC podcast 13 Seconds to the Moon. The title is self-explanatory. I need to check that out. Jimmy Poon is here from Hong Kong. Welcome. Patrick is here from Northwest England. Welcome to you as well. And we can see the Samsung Emotional LED doing its thing again. And what I'm going to do here as this is going is just remember to take a screenshot. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this database I'm keeping. What a pain in the, you know what it is. So I think what I'll probably end up doing is comparing the, I'll probably compare the, like this to maybe one of the 2 or 3 recent ones that I've looked at. Because the other problem is that the other drives are now formatted for Mac and have all my video projects on them, so it's hard to do a proper comparative. Maybe what we'll do is we'll look at this versus the T5 on this test. That might be a good, safe one to do and see where it goes from there. But I think, though, that the random read and write performance here is better than what we've seen before. So that's good. Juan Medina is here. Welcome. William Wilkinson is here. Hello to you all. And we're going to let this just finish running here real quick, and then we'll try out that fingerprint sensor. So this has a fingerprint reader on it now, which is new. And then if we have time, so I've got to be out of here in a half an hour to pick my daughter up from school. So one of the benefits of self-employment from the home is that I can pick my daughter up from school. And my friend Doug is watching. We're going to go visit Doug soon. He doesn't know this, but we're going to visit him because Doug is getting fiber optic internet delivered to his house that's not from Comcast. He's got a local ISP that came online, and he's getting, I think he's doing the, Doug can tell us in the chat, but I think he's doing the, he's got like a half a gig up and down for like $50 a month or something. Crazy. So, and it was weird because I tried to interview these people that are running the ISP up there. It's in West Hartford, Connecticut. And they didn't want to talk about anything interesting. They just wanted to talk about their service, which is fine. But I'm curious on the regulatory stuff. Like, how are they doing it? Like, what's the deal? And I think what works for them, it's actually been interesting as I've been looking for internet options. What's been interesting about it is that it's very expensive to run fiber optic cable for good broadband or coax cable or any cable for that matter in areas where you have less housing density. And when you're a big company like Comcast or AT&T, when you look at the map, it doesn't make sense for them from a profit perspective to bring good broadband out to these areas. Right or wrong, it just isn't a good business case for them, so they don't do it. And where I am, and I complain about this ad nauseum, but I only have a 12 megabit per second upstream connection. So for example, as I'm streaming now, I can't do anything else. So I'm saturating essentially my usable bandwidth for streaming out to YouTube and Amazon simultaneously. And what I need is more. Comcast has more over coax. They have their gig service, which although it's a gig down, it's 35 up, but that would actually give me a little bit more headway than what I have right now. And these smaller providers are able to kind of make some headway when there's enough density. So where Doug lives in where his city in Connecticut has a denser population than I have. So on his street, you know, if you took the same, let's say his street's a quarter of a mile long, there's probably 100 households or 50 households in that quarter mile. Where I am, you've maybe got 10 or 15 tops. So the business case for wiring up fiber optic cable down the street and maintaining it is not as clear as it would be in his neighborhood. So just last night, I heard from a company locally, like right in the next town over from me. They were chatting with me a little bit on Facebook last night because they put an ad up on one of the Facebook groups that they're, I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. So the results are what we saw before, by the way. So what they said to me was that they're looking at they're not going to be looking at doing a regular fiber-based ISP, but they're looking at starting up what's called a WISP, or a wireless ISP service, which I think in my area might make a lot of sense. So we're going to keep an eye on them. Now, what they're saying to me, and this is the thing with the WISPs, is that it's really hard to see how it's going to work in each individual case, because it's a combination of, you got to have fiber at some point. So you find a place where you've got fiber and you can put an antenna up, for example. So maybe a cell tower is a good place for that. So you've got your internet essentially going into that tower, and then you broadcast out from there, and you do it over 900 megahertz, which is an unregulated area of the FCC's spectrum that they're responsible for. And then you could transmit it to a neighborhood and then maybe go back out to fiber in that neighborhood, or you could go wireless directly to a home or whatever. And they're looking, they're saying their goal is to get 500 down, 200 up. And if they can do that, they get my money. So we'll see how it goes. The other thing is that you've got capacity. So if everybody in town signs up for the service, it's just not going to work, right? So you've got those issues to deal with. Having enough bandwidth coming into that main head end to ensure that you have enough for everybody. Because even though you buy a gigabit service, they're not allocating 1 gigabit of bandwidth for every single customer. They over-provision because you're not going to be using all of that all the time. Maybe in that direction. So, and what I need is upload. Upload is what I need. So here's the other thing though. there's a company called Crown Castle, and they, it looks like, are becoming kind of the purveyor of dark fiber. Like they got fiber running all over my town, and it doesn't run by my house, but it is in there's a little business condo park that I'm looking at maybe getting a unit in, and it does run right by there. So I reached out to them to see what's available commercially. Because even if I have to pay a couple $100 a month for faster upstream, it's going to make a big difference. Because I've been, right now, we're uploading to 3 platforms, streaming to 2. I want to start doing a few other platforms, but I just don't have, like, it's just taking so much time to upload that we haven't been doing as much uploading to some of the platforms that we like to get into. So it's really interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to, hopefully Doug's okay with this, because I'm just inviting myself over to his house. But when they're hooked up, I'm going to go to his house and we're going to see how it works. And maybe we'll try to get I'll try to get that company again to talk to me, because they've been they were really cagey. They didn't want to talk about any regulatory stuff. They didn't want to talk about net neutrality. They just wanted to, again, talk about the service. But it might be kind of fun to do that. So Doug's cool with it. So we're going to go visit him. And we have actually 2 on-location videos coming up. One we just did yesterday at my friend Mark's house. Mark he makes puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. If you go to Lon.TV/puzzles, you can check him out. And he's starting to do some live streaming as he does his work. And we went up to his house yesterday and set him up with a on-the-cheap multi-camera switching thing. Because right now, of course, I can switch cameras. I can do stuff like this with my TriCaster with multiple things going on at once. And I've helped him develop that for pretty much what he had in his house. So we have a webcam, a digital SLR, and a couple of smartphones, and we've got him going now. It's going to be fun. So that's going to be up a little later in the week. And then I got in the new Legends arcade cabinet from At Games, and we hooked it up with my Mister. So we're going to have that one coming up later in the week too. So lots of fun stuff coming up that gets us a little bit out of the usual routine here. All right, so we're going to now install the Windows software. And I know I'm going to regret this, because every time I install software on these hard drives, they tend to just stay resident in memory forever. All right, so here's what we're looking at here. It is recommended installation of program files to use the password protection. So that's why they want you to install the software. And what I hope it doesn't do is have some memory resident thing sitting down in the corner. All right, welcome. So we're going to keep it the name it is. And we can set it to a security with password or security with password and fingerprint. So I'm going to select this one. And let's begin the setup process here. All right, so it wants me to set up a password. Please be aware that you will not be able to unlock your SSD or adjust the security options. I'm going to grab some B-roll here. If you forget your password. In no event shall Samsung be liable for any data loss resulting from any factory reset services rendered as a sole measure to reset your password. It's recommended to register your fingerprint after setting password. So keep an eye on that, folks, because this is heavy encryption. They don't have the key is what they're telling you. So if you lose your password or forget it, you are in trouble, which is why they recommend the fingerprint. And I almost wonder if they're putting these fingerprint sensors on because they get too many calls from people who forgot their password and can't recover it. All right, so password recovery, okay. Okay, so I'm going to put in a password real quick. And type that in, and I'm going to click on Next. All right, so now what it's asking me for is to scan my fingerprint. And I think what I'm going to do as it's waiting for me to do that is do a little 2-up thing here. So let's go over here. I'm going to start my background rolling, and we're going to go over on, we're on ME4, which is my, so I'm just doing some stuff on my TriCaster here. So we're going to switch that larger view to that, and we're going to switch the lower view to the overhead. So we're going to go to 6 here. Oops, that's not, I'm on 4. There we go. And this is all done on my TriCaster here. So what I think I'm going to do too is maybe zoom the upper one in a bit just so people can see it better. So we're going to go over to that, and we're going to adjust the position. I'm going to crop out part of it. So let's get rid of the right and the bottom, and the top, and the left. And then I'm going to get rid of a little bit more on the right. And then I'm going to zoom that in just so people can see it better. How's that? And this is why I have a TriCaster, because I can do this in real time and it works every time. So I'm able to have all this compositing going on. Okay. So we're going to close this out. Somebody's at my front door, but I'm not expecting anyone, so I don't want any. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start recording some B-roll here. We're going to put our fingerprint down. And it looks like it's only doing one finger. Touch the fingerprint sensor multiple times at different angles. All right. Okay, place your finger in the center. Okay. Touch the, okay. Oh, we can add more fingerprints, so let's add another one. So let's add my left index finger. Wonder how many it can store. Maybe 2? And this is helpful too, because you could have, if you have like a coworker or a spouse that you want to have use it, you could do that too. Oh, we got more. I wonder how many we can add. Let's do my thumb. Oops. I'll have to look in to see how many fingerprints you can store on it. Doesn't like my thumb as much. I'm just going to pick it up here. And I will say the drive's getting a bit warm here on the table. All right, and it's asking me if I want to add another one. I'm just curious how many it supports. Let's take a look, see if the box has any indicator. It doesn't say, so let's look. When in doubt, read the instructions, right? What do we do with the instructions? Here they are. So let's see how many fingerprints it supports. Legal disclaimer. Well, it doesn't quite say. Let's see, where's the English one? Warranty. We're going to have to find out how many fingerprints it supports. So let's just say we're done for now. So I'll click done. And then we've got settings, and there's an update here. What does that do? So let's see, update. Oh, check for updates. Current software is up to date, so it must have some firmware that I can do on there too. So the big question, well, the good news is that it doesn't seem to be running anything in the background, so that's good. And let's go into settings. I can edit fingerprints. So let me pop it in with my password real quick and see what that's all about. Okay, so now we have the answer to the fingerprints. We can add 4. So we could add 1 more. All right, so let me save that. And by the way, these devices typically, when you think about who's getting the password or the fingerprint, the way these things work is that the fingerprint is not transmitted to Samsung or Apple or anyone else. The process here on fingerprints and biometrics typically, not all the time, but typically is stored on the device itself. Okay, so we're done there. So now the question is the software required for the fingerprint to work? And we want to know, is there a performance hit for using the fingerprint? So let's take a look at both of those questions now. And I've got about another 15 minutes, so we may actually get most of what I want to accomplish here done. So I'm going to close out the software. And I think I'm able to read the drive still. So let's take a look and see if the drive is readable here. Yeah, so the drive is still readable. I can pull this up. Yeah, so that's working. So let's eject the drive. Okay, so it's safe to remove. So now what should happen next here is when I reconnect it, I'm going to redo my screen I just had up on there now, because we want to show what happens when we connect the drive up. So we're going to go back to ME4. And the only problem with the TriCaster is that I can't set like presets so I can immediately jump back to my prior configuration. I have to kind of go through and manually get rid of stuff. So let's reset the zoom back to 100%. And just type in 100% here. Okay, and then we're going to get rid of the cropping. And you'll see it's like going to be super huge. So actually not too bad there. That might actually work. Although if I position, yeah, so now it's like taking up the full screen. So we're just going to zoom that out just a little bit here. There we go. And we'll position it over here. Okay. There we go. So now, let's plug in the drive here. So let me just start recording some more B-roll. So we're going to plug in the drive. All right. Oh, so it's actually asking, it's bringing up the software. I don't like that. I'd never like software that stays resident. And now it's letting us in. So the question is, where is that software running from? And is it resident on the computer? We don't know. So what we're going to do next, just to see what happens, is I'm going to plug it into the Mac. So let me eject it from here. Because now the Mac, we have not installed the software on the Mac. So let's go back to the Mac, as they say. And I'm going to just lift this up here. And give me 1 second on the TriCaster. So how meta this is. I have a fingerprint on my Mac that I type in as well. And the question now is whether or not this will show up on the other thing here. So let's see what happens here. So let me just go back to, let's go, oops, go back here. Okay, so let's go over here for a second. And I'm going to change the image that we are running with here. Give me 1 second. Oh, I gotta just unplug this and plug it back in again. I think I disconnected something here. I did disconnect something here. So we just need to get that Mac back on our video system here. So we're going to plug this guy or gal in here this way. And that should get us some video going. There we go. And we're going to replace the Windows screen on this 2-up shot that I have with the Mac screen. So let us go over to ME4. And watch this. It's going to go from Windows to Mac, like that. Okay. Netlux is asking what computer I have. This is a Lenovo Y740. And this is actually, I did a review of this if you haven't seen it. Check it out on my channel. It's just under 5 pounds. It's got a 2080 Max-Q NVIDIA GPU on it. It is as fast as my gaming machine upstairs, and it does VR, it does everything. It's just awesome. It's, you know, you would expect a little bit more performance out of a Max-Q, or hope that you would get more performance out of an NVIDIA GPU, a 2080. So the 2080 here does not equal what you get out of a desktop, unfortunately. But for what I wanted, which was thin and light, it's killer. And I got a great deal on it. I got it around the holiday season, so it was a really good price. All right, so let's plug in the drive now to the Mac. Now remember, we haven't installed the software on the Mac. And let's see. So it's actually asking me for the fingerprint, which I'm going to put in. And it looks like, hang on, folks. Okay, so it's lit up blue. I don't see the drive mounting here yet. Let's try this one more time. All right, so it is flashing blue at me here, so let's go and hit the fingerprint reader again. And it's like indicating that it's reading something, right? Let's see, it's thinking maybe? I don't know what those flashing lights mean. The documentation is not very clear on here, but it is not appearing to load up. So it looks like it might require the software. Oh, there it is. No, it's working. There we go. All right, so to answer the first question, it doesn't require the software to read on another machine. So let's eject it. Let's try this one more time. And let's see what happens here. So let's reject that. I'm just going to, I forgot to record some B-roll on that. So let us do that real quick. So we're going to call this, this is going to be Mac B-roll for the fingerprint sensor with no software installed. All right, so it's blinking. I'll put my finger on here. And it's going to think about it. And then it's going to light up blue. And then if we go to the Finder here, the T7 Touch is there. Just like that. So that's good. I like that. So now the question is whether or not the drive performs the same when this is running. So let's go over to that Blackmagic disk speed test again. And we're going to, and just to make sure I get my apples to apples here, I'm going to plug the Mac back in because I had unplugged it from power. So just in case there's any kind of power issue. And bear with me for 1 second, folks, because my wife is reaching out to me to see if maybe she's getting the child. All right, hang on 1 second. Okay, so now we're going to run that speed test again. So let me just select a couple things here. And select the T7 Touch. We're going to just open that folder up again. And let's try it out. Yeah, it looks like, oh, well, there you go. Let's see how this, once this settles down and see where we end up. Because remember, it's now having to hardware encrypt everything. And a lot of times, like, the encryption will reduce performance. But it looks like we're actually where we were before. And remember, too, that like sometimes this encryption doesn't mean everything on the drive is being encrypted. Sometimes it means access to the drive is encrypted. But it looks like we're getting about the same performance. Yep, so I'm just going to let this run for another minute or two just to see what we get. But I think we're okay here. So then the big question will be, because I have my Android phone here now too. So the big question will be on the Android phone, can we get this fingerprint thing to work there too? You know, it's kind of weird, but I'm actually, you know, it's looking like it's doing a little better on the performance now with the encryption on than it was when it was off. That's funny. Okay. Let that run for another minute or two here. 504, this is Mac fingerprint B-roll. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like we don't see a real performance hit here. If anything, it's actually doing a little better, but it could just be, you know, there's things that happen sometimes with these drives and how they work. But we're getting about what we were getting before. Benjamin wants to know the advertised speeds. So let's take a look on the box and see what they're advertising. And let's stop the test here. And by the way, the other drives I think should work with, their older ones should work too. So here is, let me give you my overhead shot here. So they are saying up to 1,050 megabytes per second read-write, 1,000 megabytes per second write speed. You can see it on the box right there. And you never get what they say you're going to get. There's overhead, there's file system issues, all that kind of stuff. But I think the reality is about 800 is what you're going to see. And that's still a lot better than their old ones. And again, what I'm finding with this drive so far is that we have consistency. Consistency is really important because a lot of these drives are super fast but not consistent. So that makes it work for me. So Netlux, is your T5 not working with your Android phone? That's curious. All right, so let's try the Android phone now. And let me pop it out of the Mac and see how this works. Okay, so we're going to plug this in to the phone here. Let's see if I can get a good shot for you all. So I have a Pixel 3a phone here that, in full disclosure, came in free of charge through Google a while back. So let's just plug that in. And then we're going to put our fingerprint down on it and see what happens. Okay, looks like we are, authenticated. And now I got to find a file app that I can use with it. So let me go poke around here and see where my file manager is on this one. I have so many different Android phones. I forget which ones do what. All right, so let's go in and look at my drive selection here. Actually, it doesn't look like it saw the phone. Let's see. Let me check one other thing. I'll check another app here and see if it's just that one app doesn't like to cooperate with me. All right. I may have to install the Android app. Oops. Okay, so let me go back and just see if it can see my... Bear with me, folks. Let me go grab that app and see if that has something to do with it too. But usually when I plug a drive in, the Files app should tell us whether or not it works. Other apps, recent files on the phone. Let's see. This is the Google app. I get really nervous about some of these file management apps too because they get a little wacky. Let me see if I can find a good one here. So I'm going to install two things on the App Store here. I'm going to go after, and I may have to go get my daughter. We'll see if my wife's going to make it to the school in time. Let me go into Samsung T7. All right, so there is a Samsung portable SSD app here, so let's grab that. It'd be weird though that you would, if it didn't require the software on the other one. Oh, so this will actually let you manage. So this might be the better way to manage, if you have an Android phone, this might be the better way to manage it. Let's see if it sees it, because it could just be too that this phone doesn't like, There we go. Oh. Okay. So it did detect it there. Okay, so let me just enter my password real quick. And I just typed the password and then it said disconnected, like it reset. I may not like this phone. Oh, there it goes. So this looks actually identical to, let's see if I can authenticate without the password having to get typed in. No. So let's type the password in again. All right, so it's got my fingerprints in here, so that's good. So it looks like it's recognized the drive, but on the file side, I'm not seeing the drive here on my list of files. Let me grab a better file manager and see if that might make a difference. So I would love to hear what, yeah, ES File Explorer is bad. You know, there's like some, because they put so much malware on it now. What's the one that everyone's using? It's got like an A on it. Is that one okay? What's that one called? That's the, good Lord, there's so many. Explorer is what I've been using. So this is the one that I've been using on my Shield TV and stuff. So I'm going to pop this one in. Famous last words. Do you want to do this? Okay. Yeah, so it's not showing up here on my list of drives. So I have the root stuff here. Oops, the app manager. Internal shared storage, but I don't see the external drive. So why don't we pop this off again and plug it back in and see what happens. And the other thing, I don't want to open the software every time I plug it in because like I don't need to set the password every time. So this Android compatibility may not be totally there yet. And I have another Android phone I can try this with, so I might look at that. But right now it's not mounting there at all. So that's not good. Now I think somewhere I have, maybe in here, let's see. I think I have my USB adapter for my iPhone because my other thing is upstairs. Upstairs I have a iPad Pro. Maybe I'll go get that real quick. I could have sworn I saw my USB adapter in here the other day. But as with everything in my room down here, if I see something one day, it's gone the next because it just disappears. And that's all on me because I tend to like not put things back after I take them out. Let's see, what's that? Oh, that's not it. Yeah, so I'm going to go run upstairs real quick and get my iPad, and let's see what we get here with that. And it could just be that that Pixel 3a doesn't like that thing. But let me see what I can find up here. Walk upstairs. And I might lose the mic here in a second because I have to go find where the iPad is, and it may not be close to where we are here. Okay. Here is the iPad. And hopefully it has some battery left in it. It does. All right, so let me unlock the iPad, and I'll come back downstairs and you can all see me again. Okay. Okay, I'm back. All right, yes, talk amongst yourselves. So now we've got the iPad here, and let us see what happens when we plug in the device to the iPad. I probably want to zoom out a bit so I can actually show you what's going on. So let me go up here real quick. All right, so let's plug this thing into the iPad and see what happens. right, so we're going to do our fingerprint challenge here again. It reads the fingerprints pretty quickly there, so that's good. And it's still chewing on it. All right, so now we are solid blue. And I'm going to just go into my file manager here and see what we got. Okay, so the T7 Touch here works on the iPad. And it gives you like the, what is this? What did I just load up? Hang on a second. I don't know what I just loaded. Huh. But yeah, the files are here. So that works. So let's try to copy something actually to the drive here. So let me go over to locations here. I'm just going to move a file. I'm just going to see if I have a file I can move from someplace. Here's one I can move. So I've got this file that it just created. It looks like it loaded it up in Goodreader. So I'm going to move this to the T7 Touch. I'm just going to drop it there. So let's copy it. And then if I go back here, and over to my T7 Touch. Okay, so we have an HTML file. Cool. All right, so that looks like it worked, right? So let's unplug it from the iPad. So we got to experiment a little bit more with the Android stuff. And now let's plug it back into the PC. So, you know, what's weird is that the software just pops up. So on the, and this is what I mean, like, where's it running? It's got something running resident here, which I don't like, because here's that, boom, that software pops up. And then I can authenticate. But is it necessary to have any software running in the background on here? Do I need to see this every time I load up things? And I don't, because it doesn't need the software, as we discovered. All right, so let's close that. And then let's go over to here, and there. Just load it up in Notepad, maybe. Yep, there's the file. Here, I'll pull it up on the Brave browser here. Boom. So that's pretty cool. Neat. Okay. All right, so Keith Richardson says, for Android on the Pixel 3a, try to see default USB configuration under developer options file transfer. Okay, so let me go into there and see what's going on with that. And I think my wife's able to get the kids, so we're in good shape there. And I got to wrap it up in a minute because I have to go get ready to shoot this review. But I like doing these streams so you can all see what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go over to on the Pixel 3a here. It says settings, default USB configuration, and developer options and file transfer. Okay. It's amazing they make things so difficult. Just plug the drive in, make it work, right? All right, so we're going to go over to file transfer. Let's see if we can figure out why this drive is not showing up here on the Pixel. All right, so I can't even find the developer options on this thing. System, maybe? Advanced. There is a system update available too for this, so maybe that's part of it. I'll try it in the review. I'll try it out on another Android device. There's no reason why it shouldn't work. It's a hard drive. If it validates itself, it's good. But I am curious, like, what's running resident on the computer? Because it's not showing up in my taskbar here. Let's take a look and see if Samsung has something just running. Yeah, okay, so here is the Samsung. All right, let me show you what is running on this computer. It's not nefarious per se, but there's no reason for it to run on here. Now, it's only using 1.4 megabytes of memory. And let me pop out the drive and see if it closes that out when we eject the drive. Oh, we got that file open there. All right, so keep an eye on that Samsung portable SSD monitor. It's amazing how much junk is running on these computers. I try so hard not to have stuff run, but it always runs. All right, so we're going to eject it. And let's pop it out and remove it. And does it stay? It does. And it's 1.5 MB. Not a big deal memory-wise, but there's something running on the computer. And I don't like that. I like things to not run on my computer when they are not needed, and it's really unnecessary to keep loading up software every time. And the conundrum here is that you have to run the software to set up the fingerprint reader, even though it's not required. So we're going to note that for the review here. And let me just note also the fact that setup software means resident on Windows. Not good, especially every time when you plug it in. So my advice on this would be to use the Android app to configure it and then just uninstall everything because on Android, it also prompts you every time you plug it into the Android phone. You don't need to see it there either, especially given that it's not giving you access to the file system. It's just having you look at the settings again. So yeah, that needs work. They always screw this stuff up. It drives me crazy. Otherwise, it's a good drive. So yeah, so we could uninstall the software on Windows and be okay with it. And what's interesting is that there's no performance hit for using that. So I think that's a good thing. All right. We are in good shape. So is there an option to disable the software at startup? Yeah, so we could, that's a good question. Let's load up, let's see if there has an option in the software to do that. That's a good question. So let's load it up. Now when it loads, it's using more memory. It's like 40 megs of RAM when it's running. At least that's what it looks like right now. All right, so let's take a look here. So right now I've got no options. So if the drive is disconnected, here, let me cut back to this so you can see what it looks like here. If the drive is disconnected, you have no option for anything. Now if I plug it in, it's going to ask for my fingerprint, which I'll give it. And it lets us in. So let's go to settings. Yeah, there's no option to do that. Now I could change the security mode, which would remove the encryption, but it is always resident monitoring. And you know, it doesn't mean they're doing something nefarious, but I just get very nervous these days about software that is not necessary that runs in the background. And yes, there's a benefit. Maybe if there's some firmware for the drive that comes out that they want to tell you about, that's good, but it's not like this is a network connected device where that firmware is something you need to be constantly monitoring. So that's it. So yeah, so it is a Samsung device. But overall, I think they've done good here, minus the software concerns. And you don't need to run the software. If you don't intend to use the fingerprint sensor, then you're okay. So, you know, it's your choice. But if you want to use it, my advice would be use the Android app to configure it, and then you don't have this stuff running every time. And then the question, I guess you could probably easily just uninstall the software. And that would take it away. Then you wouldn't get prompted with that. So I just think it's kind of annoying that every time I plug this drive in now, this thing's going to pop up. And that's what I don't like. So I'm going to wrap things up here in a minute, folks, because I got to get ready to take care of some stuff. So bottom line on the Samsung, we're going to have a full review of this on the main channel. So hopefully you all watch that, because I'll be a little bit more concise. It won't take 2 hours or an hour and a half, which is what we took for the stream this morning. But I will say this, it performs at about 800 megabytes per second read and write. That's under sustained load sequentially. Random reads and writes look good. I got to just do a little bit more on that test that we ran to make sure I've got everything consistent. What I like about the drive is that there are drives that will perform faster, but not over the same length of time. So this one is tempered in its performance, but it's consistent performance. And I think that makes a big difference here. So that's my over-under on this. Good drive, better than the last one. If you want the fingerprint, you've got it. And actually, what's good about this is because, as annoying as the software is, what is good about having the fingerprint sensor on here is that it's convenient. Because normally, if you have a drive that you plug in and you have an encryption going, you need the password to unlock it, right? Here, you can have 4 fingerprints, no software necessary to unlock it, as we just discovered. So that's a benefit. And if you were to, this thing's small, it can be lost. And if you've got some like really mission critical stuff on here, all the better to have a little bit of security and encryption going on there. So that's good stuff. All right, my friends, it's funny how these streams work because YouTube doesn't like push it out further until it sees people are watching. But by the time we get to that point, we have to close it down. So, but I will be back. I'm going to be we have more to do stream-wise with my TerraMaster thing here. So I think tomorrow we'll be back with the TerraMaster NAS because we need to do some more testing on Plex. So we're going to do that. If I can find another SSD, we'll see if we can push the speed on it a little bit more. Because yesterday we were testing it out. We had it up on my 10 gig switch, and that was pretty cool. So, and tomorrow, so here's the other thing. I'm getting the drainage around my house worked on because my, let's see, I didn't hear from my wife yet. I'm getting nervous. I'm getting the drainage around my house worked on because we get, not bad, but we occasionally get some water, you can't see it, but occasionally get some water in the basement from the gutter clogging up, long story. So they have to dig some holes around the house, and they promised me they're going to be in tomorrow to finish the job. So it's going to be a little bit of a noisy day. So we'll probably do a stream while all the noise is going on out there. It won't be too annoying. So that's where we're at. But cool stuff. So I hope you all enjoyed this look at the T7, from Samsung, and I'll be back very shortly with a full review of this. So stay tuned, everyone. I'm going to stop the Amazon stream now. Thanks to all the Amazon folks for tuning in, and thank you all on YouTube for checking in too. I appreciate you all being here this morning, and for some of you, it's this evening. So thank you for that, and we'll be back again with the full review. So stay tuned, and you might see me on tomorrow. I'll keep you posted. Just keep your notification bells enabled so you'll know when I show up. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you in a little bit.